So I figured since I pulled my Pump It Up machine apart to upgrade the Mk9 board in here, I'd make a quick video about the boards, like what each version of the Mk9 is and what sort of games are supported. Now if I move too fast, check out the video description below and I'll discuss what mixes work for each one, why that matters, what video cards are required, a bit about SD and HD and things like that. But this video is just to sort of show you the hardware and how it sort of works. So the Mk9 board, there's two versions. This is the version 1 here, you can see the model number. There are a few other model numbers that work, you can check that out in the description below. And here's the version 2. Now let's talk about some of the differences here. This is an ASRock board, this is a Gigabyte board here. Now what games work with the Mk9? Let's cover that real quick. So NX2, Pump Pro, NXA, Pro 2, Fiesta, Pump Jump, Fiesta EX, Fiesta 2, Infinity, Prime, Prime 2, and Pump It Up XX. Now, there are a few requirements on these games, mainly the video card used and RAM requirements and things like that. So a question you may be asking yourself, why can't I use any old motherboard with an official Pump It Up mix? And again, these are for official Pump It Up mixes. If you get, a pirated version, say this little guy right here, this will work on any system, it's not official. But when we're talking about official, they're programmed against a specific set of hardware. So the chipset inside this motherboard and also the video card used. If any of these two are not what it expects, it's not going to load. For example, if I try and boot NX2 on an Mk9 version 2 with an NVIDIA 210 here, it's going to throw a kernel panic. It's not going to boot at all because it expects an older video card to work with that game. It's not going to work. The motherboard's fine, so if you put an older video card in the newer board, NX2 will boot fine. That's just an example. So if you got one of the first revisions of the Mk9, the version 1 here, then it probably came with a NVIDIA 7200 GS, for example. This is a 9300 GS, but let's just pretend this is the 7200 GS. And that came with your sort of first rollout of the Mk9, that's what they shipped with. Quite an old card now. So if you want to upgrade this to Pump It Up XX, again both official mixes, then you're going to need to upgrade the video card because Pump XX doesn't support the 7200 GS. One, it just doesn't, and two, it's not powerful enough. You'll also need a RAM upgrade because you don't have enough RAM to support the features. Once you've done those two things, you can run XX just fine on here. And similarly here, if you have the Mk9 version 2 here, here's an example model number. There are other model numbers that work. Again, you can see those in the description. Again, depending on the chipset and whatnot. And also the sound chip as well, they're the two things. So the video card comes with an NVIDIA 210, typically. You may also see a different card in there, like the 9300 GS. But if you want to run, for example, Pump NX2 on the newer board, and NX2 is an older game, it won't work with the 9300 GS, it won't work with the NVIDIA 210. What you'll need is either the 8400 GS or the 7200 GS, otherwise NX2, the older game, won't run on the newer Mk9 version 2 board. The board supports it just fine, it's just the hardware requirements aren't correct. So one last thing I'll leave you with is HD and SD. Now Pump It Up XX, it's the newest mix at the moment of this video, it doesn't support standard definition anymore. It requires at least 720p. Or higher, or so HD or FHD, for example. Now, if you have an older Mk9 version 1 board with a 7200 GS, which is, what it came with right at the start of its rollout, it's not going to work on Pump It Up XX because XX requires a HD compatible system. So you'll need something like the NVIDIA 210, or you'll need the 9300 GS, both which support that. And you can actually get HD out of even a VGA port, DVI, and obviously the HDMI. So what it does when it boots the game, it'll either have a 720p or a 1080 setting. If your card supports that, it will look at the system and work out which one you can run and just toggle to that setting. That bit of it is automated, but if you want to run that game in HD, you will need a newer card like the 210 here. And as we just discussed, the 210 doesn't work with NX2. So if you want a board that supports NX2 all the way up to XX, which is what this board supports, you'll find yourself having to swap out the video card when you want to play between, for example, NX2 and XX. It's just one of those things, unless you get obviously pirated drives, which seem to work with almost any system. So all this stuff here about what games, what signals they use, all things like that, what video cards work with what release, different boards you can use with the same sound chips and same chipsets. I'll link all that in the description below so you can check that out. And for example, if you can't find this specific board here, or maybe it's $200, you could find a similar one that works just fine for maybe half the price. So that's the reason people can use other models and things like that. So one last thing I'll leave you with about the Mk9 boards, or really boards in general. If you just have a Windows system or a Linux system and you just want to run Step Mania, Step F2, Step P1, Step Prime, any other sort of free simulator you can download and play, you don't need an Mk9. You can use any computer, a desktop tower, whatever you want. And it turns out it'll probably be cheaper because these are only getting older, only getting more retro, and only going up in value. So if you have no stock drives, you don't plan on ever running stock, you just want to play customs. And the thing is, people have already recreated a lot of the later game sim files. Yeah, they might not be accurate to the millisecond, but they're perfectly playable. Then just get a Windows or a Linux drive and put it in any system. You don't need all this stuff. This is for people who want to play official games with dongles or on legit hardware. So that's the Mk9 version 1, which has now been moved out, and the Mk9 version 2. So thank you for watching.